Comparison is a thief of joy, a statement that people say a lot. But what does it really mean when comparison has a hold on your life? Let's have a chat. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's Wednesday, so you know it's time for our weekly girl chat, and I'm so excited that you're here, as I always am. But before we jump any further, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future uploads. I upload videos every single Wednesday at 2 p.m. I'm getting really good at that intro. I hope so, at least. Oh. In today's video, we're going to be talking all about comparison. This was the video that was supposed to go out last week, but then God gave me that idea. If you haven't watched that video, make sure you go watch it after this one. Don't click off yet. Make sure you go watch that video. God just dropped some gems in that video, and I feel like you really like it. But today, we're finally going to talk all about comparison. And it's not a new topic, but I feel like it's one that, I don't know, I just felt the need to talk about again because comparison can get real ugly. It can get very ugly. And as I was kind of thinking about this, I know how people are like, oh, like, it's like a gateway drug. I feel like comparison is another gateway drug because comparison leads to jealousy. Comparison leads to envy. Comparison leads to bitterness. Comparison leads to discontentment. Comparison leads to lack of trust. Comparison leads to misalignment. Comparison leads to ungratefulness. Comparison leads to a lot of things. Comparison is such an ugly act. It's such an ugly behavior that's why I really wanted to make this video of like, okay, let's talk about this and let's tackle this before it goes any further, because as somebody who struggled with it, it was like, I don't know, I was even looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, oh girl, it does not look good on you. It was not a cute look. And I feel like especially those that are probably in the content creation space, you're gonna relate to me a little bit. I struggled with comparison two major times. There was one time that was real ugly. That was real ugly because I was bitter. I was angry. it was so ugly. The one that happened in the last like year or so, I would say, was one where there were two other YouTubers that I saw that we were posting the same type of content and all that stuff. And I had actually hit a major milestone before both of them. And they've surpassed me like exponentially. And it was so easy for me to be like, Nigerian in me came out. I was like, God, like, what's going on? Like, how come they hit that and I didn't hit that? And right then and there, two ugly parts of comparison came out already. Number one, I became ungrateful in that moment. The moment I said that statement, I was like, God, like, why them and not me? I became ungrateful. But one thing comparison does is it makes you stop being grateful for what God is doing in your life. And it makes you take your eyes off of God. And it also leads to misalignment. We're going to cover that all as we go in the video. But that was number one. And then number two, it was also a little bit of jealousy, because it's like, who am I to say, God, why them and not me? Like, who am I to say that? Two things popped up right then and there. Two ugly behaviors that it's just like, it's just not cute. Now I started to doubt the content that I make. And I like the content I make. I think I'm funny. I like my content. I feel like I talk about good topics. But because I looked at what somebody else was doing, I then lost gratefulness. I then lost appreciation for what I was doing. One of the things that came into my mind is like, comparison, one, is just not a fair equation. A lot of times we see overnight success. We see people blow up out of nowhere. We see them go viral, all this extra stuff. And we just all of a sudden think that like, oh, it just happened for them overnight. That person could have been at it for 10 years. And they just blew up. You're not comparing your day 2 to their day 10. Really? Does it really work like that? I think that's what comparison is, such like an ugly, I'm going to keep using the word ugly because it really is. It's just so like, it's just ew. Whenever I felt myself starting to compare myself to other people, it was when I took my eyes off of what God was doing in my life. That's when I started to compare, because if I'm really focused and locked in on what God is doing in my life, I promise you, I won't be bothered by what other people are doing. I'm like, okay, God, this is what you said I want to do. This is what I'm going to do. And that's why I said it also leads to ungratefulness. It's like sometimes we're not happy, or discontentment. Sometimes we're not happy or we're not content with what God is doing in our lives. So we start looking elsewhere like, wait, what does she do? Maybe I should try that. And I will always say this. A successful person can give you their step-by-step of every second of their life for the last 5 years as to how they got to where they got to. They could give you that timetable. You could follow it and you will still not be where they are. Every single person has a unique path. I believe in the Bible somewhere it says we're all God's masterpiece. We're all uniquely formed in God. We're all unique. God formed us in our mother's. Like, we're all very unique. And I think the moment you let go of comparison, like, I feel like joy comes into your life because you're not worried that this person got this and I don't have that. Because that's another thing I wanted to point out. When I had that moment of like, God, why them and not me? That was also me doubting God, that like the same God that did it for them, I'm now doubting that God can do that for me. Who's to say that? Who am I to doubt God to be like, oh God, you did it for them, but not me. I guess mine is not coming. Ugliness. You see what I'm talking? You see what I'm talking about? Like ugliness. You're also doubting God in that moment. The moment you start to compare, and that's why I mentioned that comparison sometimes causes misalignment. Because like you could be on the right path that God has called you to, but because you're so focused on what Sally is doing and Melissa's doing, you've now taken your eyes off of what you're supposed to be doing. And you're trying to add a little bit about what Sheila did here. You're trying to add a little bit about what Marissa did here. You're trying to add it onto a path that was created just for you. You're gonna end up screwing it up. Like you're gonna end up screwing it up because that was not the path that God had. Their path is their path. Times in my life where I had the most peace, that I was most content. If I got 10 views, I was happy. If I got 10,000 views, I was happy. Those are the times where I simply focused on God because I had peace that like, okay, God, I'm walking in alignment with you. The moment I start wondering, God, why don't I have this? Why don't I have this? I become ungrateful. I become discontent. I become angry. I become a little envious because I'm like, why do they have it and I don't have that? It's just not my time yet. Comparison is it's such an ugly thing that I just keep saying ugly, but it really, really leads to just this ugliness and bitterness in your heart that you just gotta ask God to take it away. Comparison also leads to a different side that I'm gonna cover now. I think comparison also leads in you to downplaying the blessings in other people's lives and sometimes can cause you to miss your blessing and what you can learn from them. Stay with me really quick. While you should not look at what another person is doing and say, oh, let me try this, let me try what they're doing because it's working for them. There's also discernment in knowing when you can learn new tips and tricks from other people. And I think a lot of times, especially when we grow with certain people, you automatically compare them to the wisdom that you have and you now discount that. I hope that makes sense. It's a little bit of what I like to call the spirit of familiarity. A lot of times people will be like, oh, I see you open your little business. I see you open a little this. They think there's no value there because they're still looking at you from that lens of we came up together. They're comparing you to one another. And that's one thing that I really want to tell you to be wary of, but also be cautious of, to not let that stop you from moving in what God has called you to. Sometimes when you want to start a new path, people are going to look at you with the same eyes they have since you were like 12 and now you might be like 30. They're going to be like, oh, I know her, like she doesn't have much to say. I remember that was one thing that happened to me a lot where not that people thought I was dumb, but they were almost shocked at the wisdom that I had because they were talking to me. They were like, oh, you kind of know what you're talking about. And it's like, well, yeah, but, and this is not the fault of them or anything. So one, I want to encourage you, don't let that discourage you, but also don't let that stop you from receiving knowledge from your friends. Don't let that stop you from receiving wisdom from people because you're not comparing them to what you know them to be. In your mind, when they have changed, God might have elevated them in wisdom and knowledge and all that stuff. That's where I talk about the spirit of familiarity. I hope that makes sense. And another one that about comparison, before we go into how do you really eliminate it and overcome comparison, I'll never forget, and this is why you never, ever, 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 Kemi, they get it, ever, saying relationship goals. Those words would never leave my mouth. Because comparison also makes you create problems where they don't need to be problems. And this could happen in many different areas, but I'm just going to use a relationship. My mom told me this a long time ago. She goes, you never see me go, oh my gosh, my dad didn't do this for me, and this person and Marissa's husband is doing this for her, because you're now creating problems where they don't need to be problems. The same way we're all individuals, the same way everybody has their own individual relationships. A lot of times, and I feel like, I don't know if this even fits in the video, but I'm going to share it. A lot of times we're speaking evil into our own lives without even knowing it. We see these couples on Instagram, we're like, relationship goals, relationship goals. It looks cute. He took her out to dinner. He bought her flowers. You're like, oh, I can't wait for my husband to spoil me like that. They could be deep down in credit card debt for all you know. And now you're saying relationship goals. I want that. Do you really know what you want? Because if you saw the full picture, I promise you, you wouldn't want that. Now, you could be in a happy, hunky-dory marriage. Your husband's treating you good. Life is good. Bills are paid. You're living nice. But you see that, oh, Marissa, why do I keep using the name Marissa? Whatever. But you see that Marissa's husband is buying her flowers every week. So you now go to your husband, why can't you buy me flowers? Why didn't you do this? Marissa's husband did this. Now you've now planted trouble in your marriage. Yeah, sure, he buys her flowers, but you don't know what the other stuff that he probably puts her through. Now you created issues where they don't need to be issues. Even let's say it wasn't a lie, it wasn't a facade, that their life really is that hunky-dory. Like, they are traveling every other day. Like, what did Adekunle said, I want to be like Ashanti, traveling I want to travel for 6 months out of the year, for twice a year. Like, let's say that is really their lifestyle. That still does not mean that you should now be ungrateful for what you have just because somebody else is on a different path than you. The beautiful thing you have, you now turn it into this thing that's like not so beautiful. And I mentioned this a little bit about how overnight success really is not a real thing. I even saw a woman post a video about it. Uche Natori, if you guys know her, she's on YouTube. Her makeup, nobody like her. She posted her whole base routine recently. And of course, there are people that tried out. They were like, yeah, mine didn't turn out like that. I don't think she was telling the truth, or all that extra stuff. Uche has been doing her makeup for years. You just tried that routine. You think she developed that overnight and just posted it one day? It was like, yeah, base routine perfected. But you tried it once and you're comparing to somebody who's been doing this day in, day out. This is their job. You see how comparison can also cause you to quit? Because instead of you taking that little tip, you're like, okay, let me perfect it, let me build it up. Now you're comparing it to somebody that's done it for 10 years and you're now quitting. And this even happens when a lot of people are in the content creation space where they post videos. They're like, oh my gosh, I've been posting for X amount of months and nothing is happening. And other people are doing it and they're blowing up, so I'm just gonna stop. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? And now I'm going to go into a little bit about how to eliminate comparison. One of the main things that I've done to eliminate comparison is, one, I try to be very, very sensitive to where I'm like, when this looks a little iffy, I'm like, Kemi, shut it down. But one of the main things that I've really, really been doing is I don't really watch a lot of content creators that we do the same thing. But more specifically, I don't pay attention to their numbers. Like literally sometimes I will literally have my thumb blocking their number of likes and comments. Because for me, now I'm a lot better, but during that time, that was something that I was just very, very sensitive to. The moment I saw the likes, I was like, dang, like, oh my gosh, they got that in 3 hours. I haven't got that in 3 months. Like, it's that sometimes you really have to just eliminate what is causing comparisons. I like to give room for God to download my own ideas into my head, and I find that sometimes when I watch a lot of other people, all the ideas, they get mushed up in here, and I don't want there to be like, oh, Kemi posted a video, it seems like she copied this. So that's one of the reasons. But number two, comparison is very, very ugly. I also don't want to give myself room to where I'm watching the video, I'm like, how did they get that? Like, this video is not even that special. You have to literally like remove it. Sometimes you gotta do a cleanse on your Instagram, you gotta do a cleanse on your YouTube. Like, eliminate anybody that will make you feel, that will make you, one, doubt what God is doing in their life, and number two, be ungrateful for what God is doing in your life. You have to eliminate it. That was one of the main things that I did, where I'm just like, I take it away. And even if they do pop up sometimes, before I even give room for my mind to think about anything, I'm like, wow, God is so good. Thank you, God, for doing that in their life. Literally, I say a little prayer right then and there. I'm like, thank you, Jesus, for what you're doing. And I tap into that a little bit. I'm like, wow, the same God that did that can do that for me. Instead of like doubting God, like, God, why them and not me? That's doubt. But the other way, it's like, I'm tapping into the blessing. It's kind of like when they say, when God's blessing your neighbor, you know he's in the neighborhood and you're next. That's my mentality with that. So take some time and realize, like, what are your triggers? Like, what are moments that you fall into comparison the most? Is it times where you take your eyes off of God? Is it time when maybe somebody said a rude comment to you? Think about this. Is also like, this is a really, really like journal moment. Really write it down, trace it back. Like, what was the first time you really struggled with comparison? What was the first time you struggled with jealousy? Because it just can suck the life out of you, and we just don't want that. We want to live a life of peace, of joy, of all the fruit of the spirit. I can't remember them right now, but we want to live that kind of lifestyle. In comparison, just really just, it's like a leech. It's a leech. It just sucks the energy out of you, and it's exhausting. And the second one is, I really try to tie my validation to God. That's who I try to tie my validation to, because one day you might post a video and get 10,000 views. The next day you might post a video, it might get 10 views. You're like, oh my gosh, you're panicking, you're struggling. You're like, what is happening? All the accolades you could possibly get in life, they're all on, quote unquote, a faulty foundation. There's one firm foundation. That's my church's thing this year. There's one firm foundation, and that is God. So even times when I went through moments where like the videos were not getting a lot of views, I was like, God, I'm doing it for your glory. I literally say that prayer. I don't even give myself room to like get down. I'm like, God, I'm doing it for your glory. And when I tell you, when the grace of visibility is on your life, when the favor of God is upon your life, nothing can stop him from moving. But again, that only happens when you focus on him. I would never forget, there was a time, especially on my hair page, I was deep in that 200 views jail. Like, I want to say I posted probably about like, at least like 15, probably, I'll go back and count, maybe like 15 to 20 videos where they were just not getting anything past 200 views or 300 views. And I was like, God, you know what? I'm not going to compare. I'm not going to get weary. I'm going to keep on posting, because I know that the grace of visibility, when it's on my life, no algorithm, no nothing can compare to that. And when I tell you that God surprised me beyond my own imagination, videos with 900,000 views, 3 videos consistently with over 10,000 views. Imagine if I got down in my moment and I stopped posting because I'm comparing, because I'm like, oh, they're doing it, they're getting the views, I'm not getting the views, so I'm going to stop. Imagine if I stopped. That's what comparison will stop you in your tracks. Comparison will make you feel like you're not doing enough. Comparison will make you lose sight of what God is doing in your life. Comparison is ugly. Stop it. That might be the title of the video. You know what? I like that. Comparison is ugly. Stop it. And when your validation is tied to something so secure as God, like, you can even help celebrate others better because like the love of God is just so heavy in your heart that like you're not helping others celebrate their own success. You're not bitter. You're not jealous. You know that God is going to do yours in your own time. One of the verses I feel like kind of really explains this, and that is Galatians 6:4, the Passion Translation, where it says, "Let everyone be devoted to fulfill the work God has given them to do with excellence. And their joy will be in doing what's right and being themselves, not in being affirmed by others." In other words, mind your business, let me mind my business. I'm playing. Not really. Not really. That verse where it says, let everyone be devoted to fulfill the word that God has given them to do with excellence, I feel like that's like you focus on what you got to do and I'll focus on what I got to do. And like I said, when you're focused on what God is calling you to do and you're literally like, God, my eyes are on you, you don't take your eyes off of him, it says there will be joy in doing what's right and being yourself. Trying to be somebody else, it does not lead anywhere. It does not lead anywhere. And you know the thing about it, when you're also trying to be somebody else, you're now dimming your light, because instead of your light to shine, you're trying to take on Sheila's light, you're trying to take on Marissa's light, you're trying to take on Jackie's light. When if you just put all that away and just let your light shine, there'll be joy in doing what's right and being yourself. It literally, like, I love that where it said there'll be joy in doing what's right and being themselves. There's no joy in trying to be somebody else. There's no joy in trying to walk the same path as somebody else as well. There's joy in being yourself and there's joy in doing what's right. And then the last part of the verse, it says not in being affirmed by others. Like I said, with all the accolades, if you're with content creation, whether or not people comment, your affirmation should only be found in God. Do everything you do, everything you want to do, everything you are going to do, it should be for the affirmation of God. Is this for God's glory? Not, oh, is my mom going to be happy? Oh, is my sister going to be happy? Is my college roommate going to think this is funny? Like, everything you do, that the only affirmation you seek should be from God himself. But yeah, I hope you guys got what I was trying to say in this video. I was saying a lot, I feel like, but really, I just want to encourage you, like, tackle the issue of comparison in your life, because comparison, like I said, is a gateway to a lot of other things. Because when jealousy and envy is in your heart, it's real ugly. And the last thing you want to do is miss what God is doing in your life because you're so focused on what he's doing in other people's life because you're comparing yourself. Comparison is ugly. Let's stop it. That's my saying for you today. Take some time to journal because it's an issue you have to tackle. I'm not saying you'll be perfect. There's still some times where I catch myself that I'm like, Kemi, okay, let's go back to eliminating issues where I think I'm fine and I'm celebrating other people and all that stuff. But there'll also still be those little moments where it's like I sense myself comparing and I'm like, Kemi, shut it down. Thank God for what he's doing in their life. And I go back to like I said, if I have to go back to using my thumb to block them my likes, if I have to mute them for a little bit, do what you have to do to eliminate the comparison. Don't let comparison dwell in your heart. It doesn't give room for God to work in your life. Eliminate comparison today. This message is brought to you from Kenya. I'm messing around, y'all. Anyway, that's it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Oh, I don't want comparison to rob my joy. I need joy in my life.